This week, we are going to be filling in the evidence and support sections of our graphic organizer. So for each of your claims, you have to come up with 3 pieces of evidence and support. This evidence could be examples, facts, or details. Now, you want to make sure that each of these directly supports your claim. So all the ones inside the blue box will be claim 1, all the ones inside the green box will be claim 2, and all the ones inside the pink box will be claim 3. Now again, I found this information from my sources. So I did not make this information up. I did not pull this information out of nowhere. This information came directly from my sources. So let's go over my evidence and support. My claim 1 is that zoos are not able to fully meet the needs of all animals. So now I need to tell you when they're not meeting their needs, examples of them not meeting their needs, facts about them not meeting their needs, details about them not meeting their needs. So the first thing I came up with is that urban zoos, so this one, urban zoos which are in cities, keep their animals in small enclosures. So even animals that need a lot of space are kept in very small enclosures. So they're in cities, so they don't have a lot of space, so they are obviously not able to meet their needs. My next one is that they keep animals in places that they wouldn't normally survive. And then I even give an example. So for example, the Alaska Zoo was forced to keep one of their elephants inside because of the weather. So obviously elephants are not supposed to be living in a place like Alaska, but they have one anyways because they have a zoo. So because they kept her inside, they got her a treadmill, but she refused to use it. So over time, her feet degraded to the point that she couldn't walk anymore. Okay, so this is an example of the fact that they could not meet that elephant's needs because of where they're located. And then my last bit of evidence is that many zoos are struggling financially and can't afford to care for their animals. For example, in 2015, the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle had to spend $2 million more than what they made. Okay, so they are, really going into debt. They're not making enough money to properly care for the needs of their animals. Okay, so these are 3 examples, facts, and details to support my claim. Now, my claim 2 is zoos are more focused on using animals to make money than on real conservation. So in this section, I'm going to talk about how they are not meeting their needs of conservation and how they're more focused on money. So my first one says, let me zoom in here. So my first one says when they breed animals for conservation of the species, they can't let those animals back into the wild because they don't have the proper instincts to survive. So that is why they're not meeting their needs of conservation of a species. They can't ever let them free. Then I said, oftentimes they breed the animals in captivity only to sell them to other zoos to make money. So that's where I'm explaining that they're really focused on the money instead of conservation, because when they breed those animals, they can then sell them to other zoos that don't live where those animals live. And then I give an example of this. So I said, for example, this is what happened with the great panda. I think that's supposed to be giant. Oops. So with the giant panda. They did not help them to survive in the wild, but instead they used the money and they took that money to support an entire country instead. So they breeded them and then they sold them to other zoos. So they're not actually focusing on that conservation. Instead, they're making money. So those are my 3 examples, facts, and details to support this idea. And my last claim is that keeping animals in cages has a negative impact on their physical and mental health. So I had to tell you examples of how it hurts their physical and mental health. I had to tell you evidence of that, facts, and details. So my first one here says animals in captivity sometimes become more aggressive. So that's how it's affecting their mental health. They also often only walk in circles because they are bored, even when they are set free. My next piece of evidence is that animals in zoos often become ill when their exercise and dietary needs are not met. So even thinking back to the elephant that I mentioned before, and I might even want to move, the end result of that over here where she couldn't use her feet anymore. So they do become very ill when those needs are not met. So that's supporting how it physically hurts them. And then my last one says, sometimes animals are even killed. For example, Harambe, the gorilla, which we talked about in class, was killed because a child climbed into his enclosure. But I added even still that zoos have also put animals to sleep, so they euthanize them when they can't afford to take care of them. So thinking back on the fact that, they're not doing well financially, a lot of times they do have to put those animals to sleep. They have to kill them because they cannot provide for them. So that's an example of physical harm that they are doing to these animals. So you guys are going to have time to fill in the evidence and support for each of your claims. You want to make sure you're giving examples, facts, details that support specifically each claim. So when you come up with something, you want to ask yourself, is this an example of this? Is this a fact that proves this? Or is this a detail that proves this? Okay, so be very careful with that. And again, I got this information directly from my sources.